You're listening to Thunder Quack Podcast Network. This is the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunder Quack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunder Quack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunder Quack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get every Friday on podcast services around the globe. I'm stealing that from Kind of Funny from Greg Miller, but if you don't want to wait until Fridays, of course, you can get it early on Patreon on Tuesdays, although this episode's going up on Wednesday.
Terrible episode to start this thing
off. It's Spider-Man's fault, and you guys know that, but you're okay with it because we'll have the Spider-Man review episode up later this week. But I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin.
And
you told me not to jump in, but I couldn't help it because it's a cool intro, though.
It's
I like
fine.
it. I like it.
We're late this week. You'll actually
we did tell you last week we were going to be late.
You'll get this episode. You're getting this episode on Thursday morning because I will edit the episode tonight after Amanda leaves, but I will not post it tonight because I want to go to sleep.
Yeah.
And if I end up having technical issues or whatever, it's like I'll deal with that tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we're back. This is our last episode in this chunk of 3, so next week will be a week off.
Yeah.
But we're gonna rank Return of the Jedi.
This
is where the conversation is gonna start to get interesting.
Yeah,
I think
the next 3 episodes,
this episode,
this,
and then the
then,
next 2 definitely are gonna. That's where there's gonna be discussion. But before we get into that, let's jump into an email. The subject line for this one is Arrow for once. Hey, what's up, Mike and Amanda? I have been listening to this podcast since the beginning, but this is my first time writing in. I'm like 3 episodes away from finishing season 7. He's talking about Arrow for anybody who's curious. I can't understand why I haven't done it yet, but it's so hard because I just don't care anymore. I am looking for some suggestions on how to finish strong and or whether it is worth it. Keep up the amazing show. And that's from Sam Bonkowski. And Sam sent that to the Thunderquack email.
Nice.
So obviously paying attention to the fact that that's we're right shifting, now, send it there, and then we'll talk about it. And so we can talk about Arrow. It's not a big deal. Yeah. Obviously, we're very good at talking about Arrow, despite Arrow not being a very good show sometimes.
Okay, we podcasted about it all weekend, though. We had to do. Well, I mean, we both did the morning show for we raised funds. We do our DCTV
23
podcast. Yeah.
$2,300,
which is so awesome for the magic wheelchair, which is
which was $300 over our goal.
Yeah,
so awesome. Great job. And when I say great job, not us.
We had nothing to do with organizing
100% not us. We showed up, and I barely showed up. Cara was in the room singing half of the time. I don't even want to know what that sounds like.
But the DCTV podcast crew, they're amazing. They had us on. Andy wound up podcasting, I think, for 13 hours or something like that. And
because
then I joined
Andy
them.
is insane.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. But they raised the money, and it's always happened. Every one of these things, I think, from the beginning, we set goals and go out and reach them, and it's really, really cool. And these organizations, it's a really cool thing to be a part of. And the ensemble show, I always like being a part of because I know nobody on it. And this was the first time that I was doing it without you, Mike.
Yeah.
And I was only able to come from I only spent an hour on the ensemble show because that sometimes can go for a very long time. So I was a little late and had to leave a little early. But it was really nice to hear everybody else talk about all their other shows. Mm-hmm. But then for me to sometimes talk about Arrow. And some people were watching it, like these people where a lot of them are like, we don't really watch that anymore. I was like, you know that you can just throw it under the bus. We're all okay understanding that this show is ending for a reason. So. But we still talk about it.
It's ending for a reason. It's ending 2.5 seasons late.
Yeah.
It definitely should have ended in season 5. But you know, it is what it is. And it's we're we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now.
And I was glad Beth Schwartz got like a chance to like run a show, like, which was really cool. So that's awesome.
That is kind of the bright spot in all of that, is that she got the chance to run a season. She
didn't do it any worse than the previous showrunners. So.
It's true. The first half of the season was great, and I maintain that the second half is not great because they were building towards the series finale.
Yeah, and then
we're told, no, you're going to get 10 more episodes because we got to connect it to the crossover. But I mean, like, you just have to power through season 7, through the end of it. That's what we had to do. You just, the one piece of hope I'll give you, Sam, is that the last 10-15 minutes of the season
they're quite good.
Are very. I think they're very good. I think that the end of Felicity's story is very good.
It is, and I also do like the flash forwards, like the parts in the future. The parts in the future are worth watching through. Like it's a decent story, and it has a conclusion, and those characters are interesting to watch. So I just watch it for that stuff, and then you just sort of get the rest of it as you go. So.
The one thing about Arrow last season and the way that they're ending it, that the longer it goes on and the more I think about it, the more upsetting it is. The flash forwards and the nature of that story, they ruined those characters for crossovers in the future. So it's like Black Canary. She got her throat cut and lost her powers. And I mean, like, I think they did that and then they kind of undid it by giving her the digital one.
Whatever,
but it was unnecessary. They were stakes that didn't need to be raised. And the thing is that it ruins her for the opportunity to go over to the Flash or Legends of Tomorrow. Right? Like, these characters can have lives outside of Arrow. But it was almost, it felt a little bit spiteful of like, well, if we're ending, you can't play with any of our toys. So we're going to ruin Wild Dog. We're going to ruin Black Canary. We're going to get rid of Black Siren. We're going to do all of these things to make sure that you can't touch these characters after the show is done. And to me, it's like, you're missing the point of your shared universe. That, like, you can absolutely bring this character in. I mean, like, it would be really interesting to see some of those characters fit in Central City or what's the name of the ship? You don't know. I can't remember right now because I've watched like one episode of Legends.
Tesla. It's something, isn't it named something that's like a
it's the something or other, and it's the time machine thing. But on the ship, like, I would love to see those characters exist in those worlds.
What's the Nebuchadnezzar? What's that from?
That's from The Matrix.
Oh yeah, okay.
But unfortunately, they just kind of like burnt all of their bridges as they went across them in season 7, which was just so weird to me. But that's Arrow, and we'll be back talking about Arrow in October, so let's not belabor that any more than we have to. Let's get into some happy news.
Woo-hoo.
Exciting news. Paul Rudd was announced as joining the cast of the Ghostbusters sequel that's coming out next year.
And that's the one that's already filming, though, right?
They're filming it right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, like, I don't.
He's
like,
pretty cool.
It's Paul. When you add Paul Rudd to anything, I'm like, okay. Because he
Clueless all the way.
Yeah, he is. He is one of those actors that he is a great comedic actor. He can do dramatic stuff if he has to. Like, he is just a likable, lovable doofus, everyman,
in many ways.
And I think a perfect heir to the Venkman throne. Because Bill Murray, if he ends up being in this movie, which he hasn't been announced yet, but if he ends up being in this movie, he will not be in very much of it, with the exception of if they kill him. If they kill him at the beginning of the movie, he will be in the whole thing as a ghost.
I remember you saying that,
because he said that. He said, like, after he did Garfield, he's like, I love this. I love voice acting. I do no work. I show up. I get paid. It's fantastic. Don't have to be on set. Like, there's a great opportunity there. I think that movie needs to just start that way with You just
him just dying and then being a ghost. Yeah.
Whatever it is that's bringing everybody back together. Like I think it like you start it with Venkman getting killed by this demon ghost, whatever it is.
Right.
And then like that's the cold open, right? Is Venkman doing whatever he's doing,
Getting
then
killed.
he gets killed, and like you don't even see him die. You just see like whatever is coming towards him, and it's literally the shot like closing in on him as he's like screaming like ah, and then that goes into the Ghostbusters logo, just like the original Ghostbusters movie with the librarian, right? And then we do the Ghostbusters logo, which is like happy, like, oh yeah, Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And then you like smash cut to his funeral. Because the laughs you would get from that, oh my God, it would be so good. You just smash cut to his funeral. And then you have Ray and Winston talking about like, yeah, like Egon died 6 months ago and we couldn't, like it was so random and whatever, like inexplicable, because then you're explaining why Harold Ramis isn't in it because he passed away, right? Without having to show him. And then you go, and now something got Venkman.
Right.
Something is targeting the Ghostbusters.
Ooh, that's actually
right?
like a cool.
That would be
like
a really cool
idea.
story. So I don't know. Like this is
100%
speculation.
Of course.
I can speculate on this one with full faith that Jason Reitman is going to do something awesome. So if it doesn't live up to my speculation, that's not a loss for me. It's just like, oh well, this is a story that they could do. This is if I were writing this story, this is what I would do. And then you would have Venkman show up and he'd be a ghost, but in the same way that like Slimer is a ghost, Slimer was a person,
right?
But
right,
then he becomes a ghost, and he's just like it's what's left. It's the psychic imprint of that person. So whoever Slimer was before was obviously a slob and loved
so it's
food,
just like
and
it's the manifestation of who you are,
so like what's the manifestation of Peter Venkman? It's gonna be like a sleazy womanizing, like he's gonna be kind of gross and weird, and like that's a great thing to get Bill Murray to do. You just like have fun with that, right? But the other part of it is like the Ghostbusters are going like, well, we need to figure out the remaining Ghostbusters, and then the new Ghostbusters that will join are all going like, we need to figure out what this is and stop it. And we have like Venkman saw this thing that killed him before it killed him, but we can't get anything that makes any sense out of him because he's a ghost now, right? And because the rules within the Ghostbusters universe is that ghosts are just like weird. They're just like zany, kooky ghosts, right? So there would be like this push and pull of like, Venkman's in there. How do we get this information out of him? And it would be a great thing on multiple watches of like, going back the second time and then listening to what Venkman is saying and realizing, oh, he was trying to tell them the whole time.
Oh, right, yeah.
He just couldn't, right? Yeah. So like, I don't know, that would be my direction with it. And I would have Paul Rudd coming in basically to replace that character, not as a literal Venkman.
No, but just like as a...
Although you could do that. You could absolutely do that and be like, this is the son that Peter didn't know he had. And like he comes out of the woodwork because of whatever inheritance or whatever, right? But yeah, like he could just be a guy who is like Venkman, right? And I think that he will be. I think that that would be pitch perfect casting
for who he is.
For that.
Is it an urban myth that the reason that Bill Murray is in Garfield is because he heard that it was written by Joel Cohen and he was like, I'm in. The Coen brothers, I'm in. And then realized that it wasn't actually Coen.
No, it's not a myth. I don't know if it was the Coens, but it was
it's written by Joel Cohen. Cohen, not Coen.
Yeah.
So it's a different Joel Cohen from the Coen brothers, but it's still Joe Cohen, and when you say it out loud it's the same name. But so, right? That's like actually the thing.
Yes, he said that in an interview. Yeah. That's how it happened. So funny. But the thing is, like, he agreed, he signed on to do it. He got there and realized, well, it's not like I have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. But the reason why they approached him is because Lorenzo Music is the voice of Garfield in the cartoons,
Okay.
and Lorenzo Music was the voice of Venkman in the real Ghostbusters.
Oh, interesting.
Until he died, and then Dave Coulier comes in and does the rest of the real Ghostbusters. Unfortunately, he's not great. Lorenzo Music was fantastic. I mean,
Nice.
because that's a hard character to. All of those characters, all 4 of them are iconic.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Ghostbusters, it's no secret, is one of my perfect 10 movies. It's actually the movie for me that like I defined that phrase by. It's like there's nothing, like you can't change anything in Ghostbusters to make it better. It is exactly what it's supposed to be, right? Like not everybody is going to love Ghostbusters, and that's fine.
Like,
But for what that movie wants to be and is trying to accomplish, everything is exactly where
What
it's
it
supposed.
should be,
It's a piece of clockwork, right?
Right.
Like all of the gears are perfectly machined. It's all expertly tuned, and it runs exactly the way it's supposed to. It's a perfect movie. It's like that. Shawshank Redemption is a great example of a perfect 10. The first Back to the Future is a really good example. The sequel's not as much, but like the original, it's like everything is exactly in its right place. And the casting is perfect. The writing is perfect. The direction is perfect. The effects fit for the tone. It's all perfect. And then you come along and you go to do the cartoon series, and it could have just been a cheesy. There were a lot of cartoon adaptations
that were terrible. Yeah.
at the time, but the team that did that, most notably J. Michael Straczynski, who would go on to write comics and be one of the most notable comic writers of the last probably 20 years. That whole writing crew, they took it seriously. They wrote legit horror for children. Some of it being like Eldritch style, like Cthulhu. Like there is literally an episode where they go out on the ocean in a boat, and Cthulhu comes out of the ocean, and they have to fight. The Ghostbusters fight Cthulhu.
That's cool.
Right? And this is not stuff that is generally for kids, and yet like they managed to boil that down and use the source material and treat it really respectfully. And the real Ghostbusters is a fantastic series as a result. Nice. But a big part of that is the voice cast. Like they totally nailed the voice cast. One of the funny things about that is that Ernie Hudson, who plays Winston in the movie, wanted to play Winston in the cartoon. He was like, yeah, because like his career, like that was the first real notable thing that he did. So he was like, sure. Like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, they'd been in movies already. They had careers like SNL, all of that stuff, right? So for them, it was like, yeah, Ghostbusters is successful, but we'll go on and do the next thing. But for Ernie Hudson, he was like, nah, I'm going to milk this until it dries up, right?
Yeah.
And like more power to him. Yeah. If he wants to embody that character, great. But his voice has so much power, and he's such a good actor that they were like, you can't do this. We can't have you in it. We have to recast this character because it won't match the tone of the series. Like he doesn't match the rest of the voice cast. And so it's
interesting.
It's Arsenio Hall. Is the voice of Winston Zeddemore.
Interesting.
Yeah. Ghostbusters is one of my things, right? It's
you have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah. Ghostbusters is the first fandom that I had, right? Like that was the first thing that really, like, that and Ninja Turtles were the first things that connected with me. So, yeah. I'm excited for this movie. I think it's going to be fantastic. And every piece of news that comes out just makes it better and better.
Nice.
Here's another piece of really awesome casting news. Melissa McCarthy is in talks to play Ursula in Disney's live action Little Mermaid.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Great.
Like,
right?
That'd be really good. Yeah.
Another piece of news came out today. I'll see if I can find it really quickly. Talk about Melissa McCarthy as Ursula.
This is my first time finding out that they're doing a live action Little Mermaid. And I mean, I guess I knew it was coming because, they're doing all of them.
They are
But this is
successful films.
This is going to be the most expensive one, though, right? Like water effects. Have fun. So I'm just stuck on that for a little bit. But my one thing I will say is that one of the things that's iconic about Ursula is the character that she would like the character, the real person that Ursula is sort of modeled after, who is like a person of color, right?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, of all of the roles in that.
So this news came out today, and I didn't add it to the rundown because it literally happened this afternoon. Disney's live-action Little Mermaid. This is from Gizmodo. Yeah. Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake has finally found its star. Actress Halle Bailey, best known for her role on the sitcom Grownish, has been cast as Ariel in the movie, which is expected to begin filming early in 2020. So, yes, you're right. They did take away potentially because we
don't know who
Melissa McCarthy hasn't been confirmed yet.
Yeah.
But obviously, with this news coming out, and this is official. So with this news coming out, I think that it's safe to say that those talks are happening. Whether or not they've reached a deal yet is another thing.
Yeah.
But yes, they removed a person of color from a supporting role. Obviously, the lead villain, which is a pretty big role in a Disney movie, but they've replaced that person of color's slot. Sort of, they've moved it to the lead role,
which. Step in the right direction.
Exactly. So if you're gonna do it, this is the way to make that change, right? And I think that they're doing this with integrity.
And Awkwafina has been announced to play Scuttle the Seagull, and then Jacob Tremblay as Flounder. But Awkwafina is Scuttle.
Who has Flounder?
Jacob Tremblay. So the little
cool.
kid.
Yeah.
Good for him. Nice.
Aladdin was awesome. Did you see it?
Of course, Lin-Manuel. No, I keep wanting to go. I'm going to go.
Is Lin-Manuel Miranda doing the music?
Yeah, he's gonna team up with Alan Menken, man. Ooh. It's gonna be such a good movie.
I just got tinglies.
I know. This is so cool.
That's awesome. It's gonna be good.
Gosh.
It's gonna be so good.
Wow.
Aladdin was awesome. Lion King looks like it's gonna be so good.
It really, the more I'm seeing that, the more I'm like, it's just going to be, and it's also just a virtuosic, like, art thing. This casting is great. She's so great, this Halle Bailey.
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's going to be I'm excited to see who's Eric. Eric was one of my first crushes.
Yeah.
Him and the Beast.
And Sebastian. Sorry, not crushes, but
who's going to be Sebastian.
Who's going to be Sebastian? I'll throw my suggestion in. Ahmed Best, Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, interesting.
Let him come in and play that character.
Right. Fair. Sure.
I think that would be good. Ahmed Best is a really good actor. Jar Jar Binks is a difficult character to make believable, and believability is not the problem with Jar Jar. That's not the problem with that character.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll talk a lot about this movie as it goes through development and production and everything.
So excited.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, recently, what was it? I think it was last weekend. Again, I was reading too many books and then I just sort of was like, I need to watch something. I just need to like watch some TV rather than just read. And I was like, I really want to watch a Disney movie and I didn't want to like go to the theater to watch Aladdin. So I just rewatched Beauty and the Beast and I love it. It's so, because it's,
you need to go see Aladdin.
I know.
You gotta go see it.
I know. I definitely, it's on my list for this weekend.
I want to go see it again. Like,
let's go this weekend.
I don't know if that's gonna happen, but
I'll find a way to make myself go see
it. Let's jump into our last piece of news and then we'll talk about Star Wars.
This is the best one. Can I announce it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Witcher.
This isn't an announcent. It was announced a long time ago.
No, that's fair.
Go ahead.
But it's like it's first images really of him, like him
in character in the costume.
Yeah.
We saw some makeup tests a few months back.
Which were interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, like when they announced him as playing Geralt, I was down for that. Mm-hmm. I only have familiarity with The Witcher from The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, which I played probably 60 to 100 hours of and did not get anywhere near finishing any of the story. But it's a fantastic game and a fantastic world. I'm very excited for this series on Netflix.
Nice.
And
Wait,
obviously,
it's gonna be a Netflix series?
yeah, it's a Netflix series.
Nice.
And obviously, we love Henry Cavill.
Oh, he's my fave.
like the Man of Steel poster that I have up, like that.
Yeah.
Man of Steel is only as good as it is, in my opinion, because of Henry Cavill.
100%.
You mess up that casting, that movie doesn't work.
No.
Everything else in that movie is fine. Like there's some other cool stuff in it. Like Michael Shannon as Zod is also great. But Henry Cavill is so at home in that role. It's such a shame that DC couldn't keep it together long enough to actually make that work.
Yeah.
Because obviously Batman v Superman and Justice League were such a disservice to him in that role.
So sad.
Especially Justice League, where half of the movie he's
it was
playing
ridiculous.
evil Superman for no reason.
Like, even I forgive the DC a lot because I like really value those characters, and I'll like again, I forgive them a lot, but I just still it makes
any
me feel
chance
a little bit.
to see them. Yeah.
We can talk about the Rian Johnson film too, as another piece of news.
Yeah,
that it's announced that it's the first trailer.
The trailer for Knives Out premiered yesterday.
Yeah.
As of recording this, and I mean, it looks great. It's a murder mystery. It's kind of like Clue, but a little bit.
It's not really my jam.
More edgy.
I don't know, but I like him as. Well, I don't like. I was talking about this earlier. I'm not like a whodunit type person.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I should watch Murder on the Orient Express because that came out and had a really star-studded cast.
Yeah.
But again, it's not my
It was not well received.
Oh, okay. Good to know. But this seems like it's like in the similar vein where it's like this just big murder mystery with all these really fancy, famous people.
Rian Johnson is such an interesting auteur director because most auteurs sort of have like a style. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's definitely that's
what defines
him as auteur.
Yeah.
But it's not with Rian Johnson, it's not a visual style, it's not a pacing or an editing thing. I think it's literally, to me, in how he presents characters. And it's his sense of hyper reality.
Right.
Which is really, really hard to do well. I think Edgar Wright does hyperrealism really well too, and that's why Scott Pilgrim's so good.
Oh yeah.
Because Scott Pilgrim can only exist in that heightened, hyper-real sort of zone where you have to believe the characters, but then you have to be along for the ride when they start doing video game stuff in reality, right? And Rian Johnson is sort of, it's kind of similar, like Looper. You have to kind of figure out what are the common threads between Brick, Looper, The Last Jedi, and now Knives Out, because there are common threads, but the common threads are in the weird reality of his characters, in that like they're believable, but they are very like arch kind of heightened versions. So any one of the characters on their own, you would be like, okay. But then you put them together and you start to go, huh? Like it starts to get a little bit weird. Like Looper, you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt as like this assassin who kills people that get sent back in time. And you're like, okay, that's fine. The makeup's a little weird, kind of an odd choice. And then you realize this is literally the plot of the movie, so I don't think I'm spoiling. Plus, Looper is super old, so you had your chance. Yeah. But you realize, oh, Bruce Willis is in this movie as well, and he's from the future, and he's Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the future, and he's sent back, and he has to kill himself, and then everything goes crazy. And either of those characters on their own, which are technically the same character, you'd be like, okay, this is an interesting movie. And then you put them side by side and make them deal with each other, and you're like, this movie is very weird, and it's almost off-putting, but in like a fascinaking way that like you can't look away, right?
Yeah. That's a talent.
And like that's kind of his thing, because I think that's one of the things about The Last Jedi, that like Rose and Finn, their whole story is a little bit like, it's so on the nose.
It's super weird.
But then you like, you go back and you look at, this is the thing that Rian Johnson does with The Last Jedi that I love so much. Everybody else is like, hey, this is a sequel to Return of the Jedi, right? Like, we're continuing from The Force Awakens, which was continuing from the classic trilogy. Like, we're on that zone. And then Finn goes to run off to save Rey, and he meets Rose. And Rose is like, oh, no. I'm not a character from the original trilogy. I'm a character from the prequels.
Oh, yeah.
And then takes him off on a prequel adventure that happens at the same time as Empire Strikes Back is happening with Rey, but Empire Strikes Back flipped upside down.
Yeah.
Where it's like...
Interesting. I've never heard anybody put it like that before, but that's totally what it is. You get this prequel adventure in
they
the
go off
middle
to
of
Canto Bight, and Canto Bight is a prequel planet.
Yeah.
It's like the music starts in and you're like, what is going on? And then you're like, oh, this is episode 3.
Yeah.
This is the episode. This is the Phantom Menace. That's like,
yeah.
And all of the stuff there being super on the nose, the dialogue being very like arch and heightened, and like, I wish I could just put my fist through this whole lousy city. And it's like, what are you talking about? You sound like a character in a noir film. And then you realize like, oh, because you're supposed to. Yeah. And then like, Rian Johnson is a genius in my opinion, and I know that there's a lot of Star Wars fans out there who disagree with that and think that he ruined Star Wars. And we'll get there. In 3 weeks we'll talk about The Last Jedi in a lot more detail. But yeah, he makes really interesting choices, and Knives Out looks like an excellent palate cleanser between The Last Jedi and his Star Wars trilogy that he's going to go off and do. Because he's got free reign. It's not Skywalker stuff. It's whatever he wants to do. So he's going to go off.
A full trilogy?
Yeah. So he's producing 3. He's directing the first of those 3.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And he gets to do whatever he wants?
And he gets to tell whatever story he wants in the Star Wars universe, which like that, everybody who's like, oh, it's very obvious that Disney is pumping the brakes because of the failure of The Last Jedi. Well, The Last Jedi made a lot of money.
Yeah.
You all that are saying that also bought it on Blu-ray. You saw it in the movie theater more than once. Like, it made buckets of money for Lucasfilm and Disney. They got no problem with the financial success of that film. Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy in particular clearly have no problem with the creative decisions either, because they're trusting him to make more Star Wars movies.
That's crazy.
Wow. All of that is just nonsense. And again, we'll talk a lot more about that stuff when we get to Last Jedi. But Knives Out is, I think, going to be a really great small film, which is sort of him going back to what he does best.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's great. I'm very excited for it. Cool. The last thing that I will note is that Stranger Things drops. Actually, it might. I'm gonna go on Netflix. It's 9:30 right now as we record this, I'm gonna jump in and see.
Is that on the on the East Coast? Then it's midnight. On July 4th, which means it might be out.
Oh, Spider-Man: Homecoming is on Netflix. Has it been on Netflix for a long time?
It's at least this weekend, because I definitely saw it this weekend when I was going through Netflix to find.
Nope, season 3 is not up for us yet, but it'll be up at midnight.
I am excited. I forgot, actually. I better get through Lucifer so that I can watch Stranger Things this weekend.
I will have watched all of Stranger Things season
next time,
3 by the time we record.
Probably me too, to be honest.
Oh, we're taking a week off. I will definitely have. If we were recording on Tuesday, I will have watched all the episodes. If I have to sit and watch them on my phone while Kara watches Wally Rock on the TV, that's what's going to happen, because I do not want to get spoiled on anything.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. I lasted so long without getting spoiled on the first season.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense if you don't know what's going on. I have said that is like the best defense mechanism against spoilers, is to just not pay attention to it. Like, don't know the show at all.
Yeah.
And then when you're ready to watch it, just put blinders on and continue to watch it. Yeah. And then you don't remember what you got spoiled because you weren't paying attention to it.
Some people don't have minds that are made of frictionless material, such as yourself, and that have to actually focus on what they want to retain. I mean, some people are like me, and it's like you walk past a crack in the sidewalk and you remember where that crack in the sidewalk is for the rest of your life. Like,
frictionless mind is a really good way of saying dumb. Like, that
no,
is
you're not.
brilliant.
I have said it in the past. I will say it in the future. You are a very smart person. You are very much like Crystal, and I say this to her as well. I'm astounded at times at how, like, kind of just out to lunch some of the most intelligent women I've ever met in my life tend to be. But I think that it's something that I'm beginning to realize that these are things that might actually go hand in hand. That one of the things that makes you good at everything you're good at, it's tied to your ability.
The woeful inability to do other things.
It's not an inability, because you are able to retain the things that are important.
That's true.
But it's frictionless. Like, if you don't want to, it's like an egg sliding off a non-stick pan.
It's
like,
true.
it just goes and it's gone. So, like, I can tell you something that is totally a spoiler. And then 6 months from now, you can watch that movie and be like, totally shocked. And I'll be like, I literally have a recording of telling you, spoiler alert, here it comes.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It's a gift, man.
That must be wonderful because like every mistake I make is locked away in my brain, and I wish I could just.
Okay, I mean those
that's
are
where anxiety
specific.
comes from. But.
Yeah, those are specific things that sometimes I can't. But I think that is part of it is that like very specifically like I have to actively retain stuff though too, and part of it too is that stuff that people tell me slides out my brain no matter what because I'm a visual learner. I know I have very specific skill sets and stuff. But yes, I guess maybe my tactic won't work for everybody. But I have to say my phrase of the week now is frictionless mind. Thank you for that. It's
no
brilliant.
Problem. Yeah, let's talk about Return of the Jedi. I got no segue for that. I got zero segue for that. I'm like, frictionless mind, Return of the Jedi. Nope.
No, we're just going to go into it.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
It's your favorite, right?
It's like coming home.
Yeah.
Like you turn on, and here's the thing.
It's the one you've seen the most.
It's the one I've seen the most. It's the one that I by far like that whole summer. Like that was the one that I was watching like all the time. And the thing with it too is that it still feels relevant and new because in a way that the other two, there's a difference. Those 4 years between Empire and Jedi, I think makes a difference in
3 years, but yeah.
3 or whatever, but definitely and from the original Star Wars because I watched Empire the least. So going from A New Hope to Jedi, there's a significant difference in just the quality of the type of film and the color palette of it. There's just so many things going back and watching that movie that are like so comforting to me. And
Return of the Jedi for me is very definitive for Star Wars, and I think that's one of the things that you're probably connecting to there, and it's why The Force Awakens cements that, and it actually does it with the help of the prequels, because what you get is you get A New Hope, which establishes the franchise, and then you get Empire, which flies in the face of A New Hope and like turns everything on its head with the sequel, right? Yeah. And then you get Return of the Jedi, which is coming back. Yeah. It comes back to a lot of the themes and a lot of the ideas and certainly like the visual aspects. You go back to Tatooine. Yeah. You have a Death Star. Like it returns to A New Hope, right? Yeah. And sort of like reorients you to like, this is what Star Wars is. That last one was the second act, and it like we went to the dark place before we come back into hope,
and
right?
the big like you have a Death Star to defeat. You have this big
it's a clear MacGuffin. There's no clear MacGuffin in Empire. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like what are we trying to accomplish? Han and Leia are trying to escape from the Empire. Luke is trying to become a Jedi. Yeah. Vader is trying to capture Luke. Yeah. Those are our 3 plot lines. And it's like one of my things with Empire that we didn't talk about this very much last week, but when people go into the fact, Empire's the best, I did mention last week, it doesn't stand on its own. Yeah. The other thing is that like if you ask a lot of people to summarize the plot of The Empire Strikes Back, they can't do it. Yeah,
they'll forget.
They don't summarize the plot.
Line, right?
They tell you what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
But what happens and the plot, those are different things, right? The plot of the first Star Wars is the Empire has a space station that can destroy a planet. Princess Leia sends R2-D2, which has the plans to destroy the space station, and Luke has to get those plans back to Princess Leia.
Yeah.
That's the plot of the original Star Wars. The plot of the second of Return of the Jedi with the second Death Star is the Emperor has built another Death Star. We have to shut down the shield generator. We know where the Death Star is.
Yeah.
We know what it's like on the inside already.
Yeah.
We've solved that problem. We don't need to
Yeah.
go into that.
Yeah.
We need to shut down this shield generator so that we can take it out before they complete it.
Yeah.
That's the plot of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
There's other stuff in the movie, obviously.
But that's what it is.
that's
There's
the
this
plot.
big goal at the end of it. Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back has no plot.
Yeah, they're just escaping.
It just
Like, it's
doesn't
like you're not
have
going
a plot.
towards. You're not going towards anything.
Yeah,
There's
you have
no goal.
you have three characters
Yeah.
that are on different paths,
But like
with
emotional
Luke-
journeys.
on
It's not
emotional,
even,
yeah,
yeah.
Luke, Han, and Leia, and Vader.
Mm-hmm.
They all have things that they are trying to do, but none of them are. There's no clear goal to it.
Mm-hmm.
Vader maybe has the most clear goal, but by the end of the movie, we realize his goals are actually kind of weird and nebulous
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well. Because
yeah.
what's he? Join me and we'll destroy the Emperor, right?
Yeah.
So we come back to Return of the Jedi, and it's like you say, it is like going home, and
Yeah.
like very literally, Luke is back on
in
Tatooine.
Yeah.
And I think that holds a lot of merit. Like that's one of the reasons why it's so good.
And especially now having seen, and I can't wait to do this when we've seen Rise of Skywalker and that whole
Yeah.
story is complete, because even just with the context of what we have now with the 2 sequel movies and the 3 prequel movies, it has everything in it. It has, like, it starts out too in a way that, like, it starts in space, and that's the thing I forgot about it watching it again, like this, because it just like lives in your brain in a certain way, and you're like, I'm like, the first thing that happens is Leia goes and rescues Han, and I'm like, no, actually the first thing that happens is you establish that the Empire is actually coming to the space station, like you're actually going to get
there's
these,
another
like
Death Star.
there's another Death Star, like you get that sort of, what is the conflict? Like you get
Yeah.
that first. It's not just about them being on Hoth and having it, right? It's there's actually, like, you set up what the evil is first, and then you figure out that it's just all leading towards defeating that evil, which is really cool. But like you have awesome space stuff. Like, this is the one where you really, like, you have literally the battle on the ground is tied to the battle in the air, and you have people commenting on both of those things. You have Tatooine, like the sand, the dusty planet. You have the like this cool alien, like Jabba, like, universe, and then you also have these cool fuzzy, like, it's all the best parts of Star Wars. It's like the little kid in you that just looks at all of this cool stuff, and
well,
it just
and Jedi. In the end of Jedi establishes, I think, one of the most iconic things about telling a Star Wars story, which is having 3 planes of storytelling going on at once. Dynamic storytelling, because Empire has that, but it's not as dynamic. But Return of the Jedi, like, the end of that movie is you've got Lando leading the assault in space. You've got Luke fighting Vader and the Emperor on the Death Star, and you've got Han and Leia trying to blow up the shield generator and win the battle on the ground on Endor. And that's Star Wars. When we get to The Force Awakens and we've got Rey fighting or sneaking around, Han and Finn doing their thing. They got to blow up the thing to save, to help them shut down the shield, blah, blah, blah. You've got Rey doing her thing in her conflict with Kylo. And then you've got Poe leading the assault on the Starkiller base. That's Star Wars. Like, that feels so definitively Star Wars.
And because the Jedi story is the one that's singular. Like, there's always a conflict that's really personal, and that was really cool that you keep that in Rey and Kylo, like that sort of dynamic that drives everything else. And that's the thing too with, like, Luke and Vader story, is that that's driving a lot of the conflict that's happening elsewhere, but it's grounded and rooted in this sort of personal storytelling, this personal journey. And that's the thing
That's
the heart of it.
That's what the prequels miss on, because
who are you following in the prequels?
Well,
whose story is it?
Intentionally, the villain of the prequels is obfuscated, right? Like, he's the Phantom Menace. It's established from the beginning. That's the story that George Lucas wanted to tell. And for better or worse, it's the story that he told, right? But unfortunately, what happens is then you have stand-ins for the real villain in Darth Maul, Count Dooku and then General Grievous, right? And we deal with each one of those in each movie, but there's really no stakes and there's no consequence there.
Yeah.
I mean, like, General Grievous dies halfway through Revenge of the Sith, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool, but it's almost unceremonious, right?
Yeah.
Like, Obi-Wan even kind of notes it. He's like, I used a blaster to do this. It's so gross.
Yeah.
Like, he tosses it and goes so uncivilized, which is a reference to A New Hope. But yeah, like, it lacks the meaning. And then you get the battle between Obi-Wan and Anakin at the end, which is supposed to be our fight with meaning, but we juxtapose that with a battle between Yoda and Sidious.
Yeah. Which is
also like it's just
you have too much of the same stuff that's not, and nothing is something that's tying everything else together.
The battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan should have happened during Order 66.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that should have been the way that played out. You should have killed Grievous, and then Obi-Wan finds out that Anakin has done what he's done, and it has to end on Mustafar because Anakin gets burnt and blah blah blah. So like, and that all goes back to the original novelization of A New Hope has almost like a flashback when Obi-Wan's telling Luke about Vader and Anakin, and the story, like the flashback is of Vader basically being like burnt in a lava pit. Like it's kind of, I haven't read it in a long time, so it's kind of fuzzy, but it's all kind of like, it's very similar,
right?
But it's from Obi-Wan's perspective, and it's sort of like a half truth, right? Yeah. But it's very clear that yes, you've clearly just watched
it's my favorite line though, I think overall in the series.
It's the one that I use probably the most.
Because it's the one that holds little truth where like you were doing that, or like it's like whatever, that's like a catchphrase rather than an actual.
Well, it's a Taoist principle, so I think that any Buddhists listening would probably have a bone to pick with you saying it's a catchphrase. But yeah. I mean, like, it is the most Jedi thing I think that Obi-Wan says, but it's also kind of the douchiest thing that he says, because he's like, I lied, but it's not really a lie if you just believe that it's not a lie. Like, well, no, you didn't tell him the truth. You intentionally withheld information from Luke because you thought that this would be difficult for him to handle, but you also put him into a situation that he couldn't understand. You let him, like, both Yoda and Obi-Wan let Luke go in Empire, knowing the truth. And obviously this is all after the fact. George Lucas was making it up as he went along. Anybody who thinks that he like had everything written out,
no.
it's like, no.
Heck no.
Things changed time and time again. But the Ewoks, for example, were supposed to be Wookiees. Initially, it was supposed to be
the Wookiee planet,
the Wookiee homeworld. It was supposed to be like Chewbacca coming home and like defending his family. We were kind of get a little bit of his story there, but then they were like we can't make 100 of these guys. Where are we gonna find 100 7-foot tall guys? And then in Revenge of the Sith, they do it, but you know how they did it?
CG.
5 7-foot tall guys.
Yeah. and then just
different costumes and a lot of compositing and a lot of CG. So he was able to realize that later. And that's the only reason that Kashyyyk is in Revenge of the Sith. But yeah, these movies, these stories evolve over time and become something else. And that story of Anakin, the original idea of Anakin on Mustafar and the lava and all of that, so that's how Vader ends up in the suit. It was there from the onset, but it wasn't necessarily. I mean, like, originally Luke and Leia were one character, and it was Leia, and she was the protagonist of the story, and then he split it into two characters.
No way, really?
Yeah, and cool. That's where he comes back to it in the third movie, in Return of the Jedi, and says, actually, they're siblings. They're twins. Right. And that's him going like, well, originally they were one character.
Yeah, so no.
Because it's The original cast of Star Wars in the first draft of that movie is vastly different. Han Solo is Chewbacca.
Oh.
Obi-Wan has a lot of Han Solo's character traits of the like brashness but Obi-Wan is also a little bit more like Anakin Skywalker in that way. He's kind of that character too. And then there is a character in the very beginning of the story that is essentially Qui-Gon's character that we then don't meet until we go back to the prequels. Luke and Leia are one character, and Leia is the predominant character in that. But then there's another princess who is a child that they have to protect.
Whoa, that's a mess of a.
There's a comic book adaptation of it that I have that I can dig up and you can borrow if you want to read it. Nice. But it's not very good. Okay. There's a reason why.
That's why you do revisions and why you make new drafts. Yeah.
But you read through that original, so it's the comic book adaptation is an adaptation of the first draft of Star Wars, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller is the full title. But
no way.
That stuff, all of those ideas eventually make it into the movies.
Right.
Through the course of the 6 movies that get made.
Right.
And then the Force Unleashed games where the name Starkiller gets applied to the hero in that story. But yeah, like these things change. If you thought that George Lucas planted seeds in A New Hope, he didn't.
He just sort of wrote a movie and then
he just developed it.
But it happens all the time, right? Over a certain amount of time, you have to find your way back to things, and I mean,
he does the same thing with Indiana Jones. I've talked about this before. You do Raiders of the Lost Ark. It creates the franchise, and then he does something wildly different with Temple of Doom. It's the same character, it's the same world. But it's a very different type of story. There's no Nazis. There's no Christian imagery. It's actually Indian sort of mythology in that one, and it's a totally different type of film. Even though it's exactly the same type of movie.
Right.
And then you come back to The Last Crusade. And it's like, okay, now that we've done both of these versions of Indiana Jones, we kind of know what is and isn't Indiana Jones. And they make that movie, and it's kind of definitively indie, right?
Is Last Crusade the one with Sean Connery?
Yes, yeah.
Temple of Doom is the one with the boulder?
No, the boulder is the very beginning of
the whole series,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, okay, cool.
It's the adventure that we come into at the end of. That he's just finishing that adventure.
Yeah.
And Indiana Jones it's not the story the movie that originates the idea of in media res, but it is definitely the one that made it popular.
Right. Yeah.
Like the reason why we get in media res like cold openings to movies is because of Indiana Jones. Because what's the most iconic thing in Indiana Jones? The boulder scene. Yeah. The bag of sand sludge, and the switch and then the boulder. Yeah. Like that's 100% the most iconic thing about that character. And that's
the literal first thing that you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm very sorry. Because people that listen to the full thing already heard me talk about how much I've been watching Lucifer. Yeah. But I have to say, perfect storytelling and the idea of being able to set a character up in 3 minutes is such a skill. And I will the thing about Lucifer and the reason why I got hooked on it is because the pilot is a work of art. Yeah. Like the opening for that story, even though it tells you nothing about like the actual, I didn't realize it was a procedural until well into the pilot because I was like, oh, this is just a crime drama. But the opening of it, you get so much of that character, in 3 minutes exactly who that character is and what he's going to do. And I think that there's something very awesome to that, exactly what you're talking about, that you can set something up that's so iconic because you in action and in what it is that you're trying, like you think about overall what is the story and how can you best meet these characters. And it's one of the things that I think Arrow has actually helped me realize is what makes good action shows. And that's something that we always sort of talk about, is that the things that are most interesting with Arrow is when they start with something is happening and there's an action and you get the fight in the beginning and you get the fight in the middle and you get the fight in the end, and there's a formula to that, and it works. And I think that what you're talking about too with action, the way that action movies work, I think Indiana Jones is a very good example. Like that's the iconic way that because you meet the characters and you learn who they are through the actions that they do, and that's like a perfect example.
There's somebody did basically an experiment with Raiders of the Lost Ark to kind of show how much of a perfect movie it is. Again, another perfect 10 movie. And they took out the dialogue. It's just the score. They turned it black and white, and it just score, black and white picture, and the movie absolutely works. Oh, wow. At no point are you lost. Like the storytelling, the visual storytelling, and the music are so good in that film that dialogue and color aren't necessary.
Interesting.
In order to enjoy that story.
And you still get the characterizations.
You understand who everybody is, and it's because, and this is where Steven Spielberg is no longer Steven Spielberg. He was the master of show don't tell.
Yeah.
And now his movies are all tell and just showing ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Right?
Or like grandiose effects for the spectacle of it, right?
So like you're not doing anything for story. Yeah. You're just doing it because Ready Player One we can.
Yeah.
Iron Giant's in there, the DeLorean from Back to the Future. And I mean I know that stuff is sourced from the book, but
it's not actually.
Iron Giant isn't, but the DeLorean is. The DeLorean's
it was one of the cars in it.
Yeah.
But I will say the biggest disappointment I have with Ready Player One is that the core of Ready Player One's story is John Hughes. And the issue with adapting, you can't adapt John Hughes. It's the most protected properties I think that exist anywhere are John Hughes films. Like you can't touch those things. So
oddly, the best tribute to John Hughes is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah. Well, and there's tributes to
the
it.
first one, not Far From Home. Not the new one,
because it's things that do really good. I also think Easy A is a great tribute to John Hughes. Like it's
Easy
a perfect
A is
the ability to like
film.
take everything that made a John Hughes movie great, but you can't actually literally take John Hughes movies. Yeah. And the problem with Ready Player One is that almost all of it relies on tropes that John Hughes created. Like it actually you go inside Ferris Bueller. So the idea that it's The Shining.
I haven't read the book and I haven't watched the movie.
Oh no way!
Like the movie just
it's just
there's
spectacle.
No appeal.
It's just spectacle because the things that are missing are the things that they couldn't. They're the human element, right? And that's the idea. Exactly what we're talking about. The thing that makes Star Wars at its core Star Wars is that you care about one character and their journey and where they're going, and they take almost all of that away in Ready Player One because they couldn't get to the fact that he's in love with these movies from the 80s and knows everything about John Hughes, and this relates to this teenage experience and is in like a high school and can't get out of it and has to find a way, and his knowledge and his nerdiness is the thing that sets him apart from everybody. Like you get none of that. You don't care who he is at all. He lives in this high-rise like a mobile home park because they can make it with VFX, and it just takes away all of the core of that. And also, of all the choices that you could do, it's because they could get the rights to all the Spielberg stuff, so they use The Shining. But again, that's not at its core. The Shining is a spectacle movie, whereas Ferris Bueller is a movie that's rooted. Like you have to understand characters to remember that movie. Like, and also the things that, like again, you had to know. One of the tropes in Ready Player One is that like
you're the first person to get me to actually care about like maybe checking out the book first, and then watching the movie to see how wrong they got it.
Yeah. But it's just because it is genuinely, if you like 80s stuff and you're a nerd, Ready Player One is a great book. Yeah. Because it's just everything. You're like, oh man, because the shtick is the reason that he becomes so good is because he's watched the movie so many times and literally. The thing that gets him to get the first key and to win is you have to go into Ferris Bueller, the movie, and be Ferris Bueller and act the whole thing out and get every line right. Like that's the thing that he can do. And it's such a unique thing. Like you have to know that movie inside and out. Yeah. So it's just it's just a weird, cool, nerdy thing. And so but the spectacle of the movie is the thing for Ready Player One for me is that I just want that to be real. Like the idea of virtual reality and to like that excess is kind of interesting. So. But anyways, yeah, I would highly recommend read the book before you watch the movie for Ready Player One. Unless you like Steven Spielberg, because if you like Steven Spielberg, just like the spectacle of Steven Spielberg, then it's
Steven
enjoyable.
Spielberg post Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It's just basically an homage to Steven Spielberg is what that movie is.
But he made the movie.
I know.
He just made an homage to himself.
Well, because he could use stuff from his own movies.
So weird.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi. We've gotten very far afield with this one.
Well, I feel like when you're talking about George Lucas, it makes sense to also talk about Steven Spielberg and James Cameron. Because when you're talking about iconic directors that sort of have shaped a conversation in science fiction, and it's at the core of the differences in their storytelling and how it's evolved over the years, George Lucas just hit that sooner than everybody with these prequels. Because he was the first to fall into this trap, which I think in a way has happened. Like, even when you look at James Cameron's storytelling, there's a huge difference between Avatar and Alien, right? Or Alien or Aliens?
Aliens.
Yeah. But even though there's VFX and stuff in Aliens, right? Like, and it relies very heavily on that. At its core, that story doesn't rely on the spectacle of it. It relies on these characters that you love and these tropes that he plays on and that dynamic. But when you get to Avatar, it really is literally about the spectacle, because at its core that story
that movie was about 3D.
It was about 3D, and it was the thing where I remember literally telling my mom, I was like, why did you go see it? Because she's like, I don't understand what the whole the big deal about this movie is. I was like, well, did you see it in 2D or 3D? She's like, 2D. I was like, that's it. It's because you went to see it in the wrong medium. If you just watch it, it's kind of a subpar movie.
I have never watched Avatar outside of the movie theater.
Yeah,
I saw it like 4 times in the movie theater.
Yeah, because it's a great spectacle, but
because at the time 3D movies were not good.
Yeah,
and then here comes Avatar, and it's like I remember the moment watching it the first time when they're on Pandora for the first little bit, and they're like going through the forest, and there are like light beams coming through, and the light beams are diffused but in 3D.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
and so it's like, it was the first time going to a movie where I was like, this is unbelievable. It's like I'm there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can remember that vividly, of being like, I can't believe they pulled this off.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that I'll say about the Ghostbusters 2016 movie that they did that was awesome was they shot the movie in anamorphic widescreen, but every once in a while, the special effects would break out of the anamorphic widescreen. Because anamorphic is wider than 16:9, right?
Oh, okay.
So the movie is actually presented in a 16:9 format, but with black bars.
Right.
I've never watched it on Blu-ray or on Netflix or anything, so I don't know if you can if it still does that on a home TV, entertainment sort of setup, right? But in the theater, what would happen is like the proton streams would blast out of the frame into the black. And I was like, that is so cool, because it, like, in 3D, when you see the movie in 3D, it's like it makes the movie pop in this other way that it made it feel like more of an experience. Unfortunately, the rest of that movie is kind of but it's not a Ghostbusters movie. That's kind of the biggest problem. But I was so amazed by that. And it's so funny how, like, spectacle can be memorable, and it can be important, and it can be a very big part of filmmaking. Return of the Jedi is a perfect example of it. If you go back and you watch it, the Battle of Endor, when they realize it's a trap, then the Imperial fleet comes around the moon, and all of the TIE fighters are coming at the screen. Watch it really carefully. Those TIE fighters, because of the special effects at the time, they don't come from all the way in the background, in the foreground. They pop in.
Yeah.
There's like 10 in the foreground, and they come and they zoom past you, and then another 10, and then another 10. And you can kind of watch, and like the fourth layer, they're just popping in out of nowhere. Like, they're just appearing as if from thin air. But the spectacle in that movie is so good, and the performances that go along with it, and the story that you're in at that point are all so solid that your brain, when you're first watching that movie, or I would even say for the first like 60 times that you're watching that movie, which I can say from experience, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, it's a trap.
Yeah, get out of there.
Like we know that we already knew it was a trap. We knew it was a trap before it was a trap.
Yeah.
But like the trap is sprung, and oh no, what's gonna happen? Yeah. And even on the 30th time, when you know that Lando's gonna be fine and Wedge and him are gonna blow up the Death Star,
like, oh,
it's still edge of your seat sort of thing, because the story and the reality of it is so good that you're there for the ride. Right. And that you forgive the special effects. Whereas you flip that, the story in Ghostbusters is kind of meh. The performances are okay. There's some good jokes in there and stuff. There's some stuff that, like any Paul Feig movie, it goes on for 3 minutes too long. Yeah. When she shoots the blaster for the first time, Melissa McCarthy, and it like shoots her all around, and she like pinballs all over the back alley or whatever, and it's they do it like 4 times. Yes. And it's like
I just hate that kind of humor too. It's not funny to me, so it's
fat person fall down, not funny to me. No. Chris Farley was able to do it and make it funny, but that's because he was Chris Farley and like he was in on the joke. Melissa McCarthy, I feel like she's in on the joke, but also like it's exploitative. Weird. She's better than that. Yeah. Right?
It's weird. She started out as Sookie, man.
Well, she's a great actor. She is a great actor.
She started out as an actor.
Yeah.
And then got shoehorned into this sort of
She did Bridesmaids.
This comedic sort of weird.
Yeah. Fat person fall down. Like that's it's no different than Hitman and Crotch. Right? Like these are things that you can do that you'll get 70% of the audience to laugh. And if you do it in succession with with an actual funny joke, and then you do that as punctuation, you might get a pretty solid hysterical moment.
If you do it like there's a certain time for punch-up humor, like when it like plays off of something that's I don't know.
Yeah, like you have like a real like witty like let's say a movie that has Greg Kinnear in it, right? Yeah. He's a great comedic actor with perfect timing, like a Mystery Men, right? So you get him in there, and it's like he's giving like a great like sarcastic, like just disgusting performance, and then you kick him in the balls. Hilarious. That would be very funny. But if you just put Seth Rogen in a room and you just throw a football at his groin, not that funny. Not that funny, right? Yeah. Seth Rogen's never done that, by the way. But I'm saying if you did that, you wouldn't make a successful movie. So yeah, it's like you have to. Story should always come first. Mm-hmm. Characters should always come first. And then if you can tell a story about characters that also happens to be about spaceships and giant dogs in mechanical robot things, like that's a bonus, right? I just saw Far From Home last night, the new Spider-Man movie, and it's a great example of like characters and story are first, and then the rest of the movie is spectacle, but the spectacle is only fun because we care about the characters.
Yeah, and it's not.
Otherwise, it's just CG.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and you brought up Jupiter Ascending last week, and Jupiter Ascending is like so close to a good movie, except for the fact that it's 45 minutes too long, and there are 10% too many characters in it.
And it takes exactly an hour and 1 minute to understand what the motivations of the bad guys are.
Yeah.
That I timed it because I was like, the moment I found out, I was like, wait, how long have I been watching this movie for?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's insane. But there's actually a lot about that movie that's great. Like there's like the visuals are phenomenal.
Have you watched it since we've talked? Because I feel like when I
watched it.
Maybe it was.
I didn't see it in theaters. I didn't see it soon after theaters. I watched it one day when I was homesick.
No, it's The City of a Thousand Planets that you haven't seen.
Yes, I haven't seen that.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, I did. There was a day when I'm homesick, and like the house is empty. My favorite thing to do is to catch up on movies that I didn't think were worth watching because it's like, well, I'm not in an optimal viewing.
Yeah, you don't want to waste a good viewing experience.
Either I'm going to watch Star Wars again.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to watch something that's like, whatever. If I fall asleep, I don't care.
Can we talk about the things that I don't like about Return of the Jedi?
I guess so.
Well, just in the special edition, why did they add the stupid monster in the Sarlacc pit? Like
Oh,
that.
I
really,
love the beak.
Really?
Yeah, I
hate
love it.
It's just like
It's now
it's
the
just like, it
effect
looks
is
like
dated
it,
now.
It reminds me of the plant, the man-eating plant from Shop of
Feed Me
Horrors.
Seymour. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess.
Mind you, that's my only. No, that and then they ruined the Max Rebo band. I think.
Oh, yeah, I prefer Jedi Rocks
Yeah.
to the song
Yeah.
that's in the special edition.
Yeah,
for
so.
sure.
Those are my only two gripes, though. With
But okay, so you say that, but when's the last time that you actually watched the original sequence?
Okay, fine.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not great.
Really?
It's not great. It's
Okay.
very much just like a thing that's happening in the background.
Well, it's because it's supposed to be, though.
Yeah,
Isn't it? It's not
but
about that.
It's the best thing to do is somewhere in between those two.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
Updating that scene is a good idea. Updating it the way that they did was a bad idea.
so. Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot of stuff in there in the special edition that is very much like, we can, so we should.
Yeah.
So they extend the scene and they put a new song in, and
Yeah,
it's,
fair.
you know, it's still a good
Whatever.
song. I like
Yeah,
the
it's
song. I much prefer the end of the original, when it's just Endor.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because
Um,
that's what it is. It's this again. It's
Yeah.
the scope of storytelling.
So
That like you get it's going to have consequences throughout the universe, but right now this
Yeah.
is about their particular battle,
Return of the Jedi special edition is the first time we saw Coruscant.
which is
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like that was a big deal that Coruscant had been mentioned in books, but never in the
never actually
films.
seen,
We didn't really ever hear anything about the Imperial capital in the movies. And so, yeah, when it was added in, it was like, oh,
But
wow.
they saw it because it was
At that
wasn't
time-
it right before the third? Because in the third, the prequel is when we see it.
Yeah.
In
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. Okay.
Yeah, we see Coruscant for
The
the first
special
time.
editions were released before the Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
1997.
Oh,
And then Phantom Menace is 99.
right.
So Phantom Menace was gearing up for production.
Right. So they would have known
As
what
they
it
were
was,
doing
what it
special
looked like,
edition.
and built it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It is weird. It's kind of like shoehorned in there as like
Yeah, I don't know. I just not.
you know, like showing Bespin and showing Tatooine,
Yeah.
and it's like
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think for me that's the biggest thing, is that like, yeah, the Empire sucks. We all agree that the Empire sucks, and obviously like a lot of the galaxy was subjugated, but the Imperial homeworld would not be like instantly like that day,
Yeah.
like, oh, let's tear down the statue of
Yeah.
Palpatine, right? They have no reason.
Yeah.
They have zero reason to dislike the Empire. They're a bunch of wealthy aristocrats
Yeah.
living in the lap of luxury. Now, there are levels underneath the surface of Coruscant where the poor people live. That is established in the Clone Wars. So I mean, like, I'm being very like
yeah.
push up
But
my nerd
still,
glasses
yeah.
while I talk about this, but like, yeah, the people on the surface, like, if you really think about that, like, they have everything to lose
Yeah.
in that, and eventually they are no longer the capital of the galaxy.
Yeah.
It becomes shoot, what's the planet that gets blown up in the next movie? The system, the Hosnian system. Hosnian
Oh.
Prime becomes the capital,
Is that
right? The
Rogue
seat
One?
of the Senate. No, in The Force Awakens.
Oh, Hosni. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Nice.
that's the seat of the New Republic, right?
Right.
So,
Cool.
yeah. They, like I said, they had everything to lose. There's a lot of really great expanded universe, like the new material. The Legends stuff is good too, but like there's new stuff that actually like delves into the dynamic. One of the best things is unfortunately contained within Battlefront 2,
Yeah.
which is a terrible video game to play, but has a really great story about a character who was an Imperial who eventually turns and joins the rebellion.
Cool.
But anything left to say? Because we got to wrap it up, or we're gonna not be able to upload
Yeah.
this.
I don't think so. I mean,
Where do we rank it?
I feel.
You rank it at number 1.
I do. Yeah. It's my number 1 movie. So.
Yeah.
Return.
Yeah, I mean, for all of the reasons I said about it being definitive Star Wars, I have to rank it at number 1 thus far.
Yeah.
Yeah. next week will probably be the place where we start to have
We'll have a conversation about
debate back and forth. So yeah, it's the ranking is we're at 6 movies now, right? Yeah. So number 6 is The Phantom Menace, and then 5 is Attack of the Clones, followed by Revenge of the Sith, followed by A New Hope, followed by Empire, and number 1, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. I will say that the Empire's New Hope debate was a big one. Yeah, and that's still a cusp. But yes, it is in reverse sequential order. Yeah. So because it's a return of the Jedi. I love it.
It's great. Cool. So we'll be off next week, but then we'll be back the week after to talk about The Force Awakens, which will be fun because we don't have nearly as much history with that movie as we do with the other 6 movies we've talked about.
And I also did just watch it recently for funsies, so maybe I'll watch it again.
And with whatever other geeky news we'll have to talk about. But until then, you can check out all the other great podcasts on thunderquack.com. So head over there, check that out. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thunderquack, on Twitter at thunderquacknet, and on Instagram at thunderquack podcast.
You can also follow us individually. I'm at akonkin, AKONKIN. That's on Twitter. And akonkin86 is me on Instagram.
And I'm at arkwolf, ARKWULF, on Twitter and Instagram. And if you like what you hear, you can support us in 2 ways. First, by heading to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merchandise. And second, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support. If you have pledged at the $10 or above level, know that I am working on the illustration for the first Thunderquack quarterly that's going to go out.
I think we're going to have some special Comic-Con stuff. I want to do some exclusive Comic-Con stuff for the Patreon supporters too, because I'm going to go, there's so many things that I've been invited to, and I'll see what sort of fits for the network and what would be like some special content, because I'm so excited. We get access to the press room, so I'll break it down and be like, okay, Mike, this is stuff that can go out for the regular podcast, and this is Patreon. I'm so excited for Comic-Con. It's going to be so good.
That is exciting. When is Comic-Con?
The 17th, the weekend of the 17th of July. Okay. I don't know if the 17th is the Thursday or the Friday or the Saturday, but it's...
The 17th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, so I'm going then on the 17th until the 20th, I guess. So the 17th is the press preview day, or the preview day, and then it starts on the 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st.
Perfect. So we'll be able to record on the 15th and on the 22nd?
Yeah.
And 22nd will be our last episode until we come back for Arrow. Yeah. And which is a terrible thing to say as we're promoting Patreon, because it's like you're going to sign up for Patreon and then the regular episodes with Amanda and I won't be coming out.
I feel we can release maybe some Comic-Con stuff during that time.
We'll have content that's exclusive for Patreon supporters. It might not be on the weekly schedule, but we'll have stuff. I just probably won't have anything to do with it because August is going to be a little bit rough for me. But August, September.
Rough in the best way because you get a new baby.
I just won't have time for it. Patreon.com/thunderquack. Go over there and pledge your support. Thank you to everybody who does. And keep an eye on your mailboxes, and in 2 instances, your physical mailbox for the Thunderquack Quarterly, which will... I hope that everybody will be able to have it by the end of July. That's that'd be good. Pretty realistic. I've already started the illustration. Nice. It may or may not have something to do with the movie that I saw last night. So, I'll post some previews for the people who are who are gonna expect to receive stuff. Cool. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
It's a trap.
It's the worst delivery of that line.
I
ever.
know. Okay. But I'm like, what can I use? And I was like, it's iconic. Because I can't use May the Force be with you again. Although that should just be what it is for all of Star Wars. I shouldn't have.